Hey guys, it's Cindy. I'm doing a book review for you, and it's been a while. The new Charlaine Harris and the new Joanne Fluke are out on paperbacks. I've read both of these. I read them actually when I was in Utah. Honestly, it was a while ago. I was in April. I don't really remember all the major plot points of the books. I do remember that I enjoyed both of them, though not as much as some of the others in the series. They're both entertaining, good reads. Never read these series. I would recommend them. Just a quick go over in case you've never seen my videos. This one is obviously based on a girl named Sookie who can read minds, and she also has a lot of vampire, werewolf, witch interaction. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of it. I mean, it's what True Blood is based on. It's a great book series, and what's great about it too is if you watch True Blood and you love it, they stay true to about one or two storylines from the book. And each season is based on a different book. So it's currently in the fourth season, which is the fourth novel. But the rest of the story is very different. So a lot of the times there's little twists on even those plots they keep the same. It's basically about Sookie and Eric and how they're dealing with their new partnership, connection. I don't want to ruin the series for you, but they have some issues with that. And also Eric's maker comes in this book. Now, so in the TV show, Eric's maker dies in season 2. In the books, you only meet Eric's maker in this book, and he brings with him a new vampire that he's created who gets into a lot of trouble and doesn't like playing by the rules. So Eric has a lot on his plate to deal with them, as well as trying to deal with Sookie. So that's basically the main plot point of the book. I know there's some other stuff in there as well. There's a new vampire king to deal with. The other new book out is Joanne Fluke's new book, which is called Devil's Food Cake Murder. If you love culinary mysteries, this is the best series, in my opinion, to read. Basically, it's a series or type of book that mixes murder mystery with food. She's a baker, and there's also a ton of recipes in the books that you can also make. I just really like them. I don't know how I got into them. I think one day in high school I just picked up one called Death by Chocolate, which is by Diane Mott Davidson, which is also a really awesome culinary mystery writer. And I just got hooked on them. And so ever since then I've been into them. It's really awkward when you go to the chapters and you're like, do you have the new cookie murder book? And my boyfriend makes so much fun of me. He's like, your bookshelf and my bookshelf, very different. But I love them. They're like guilty pleasures for me, and I really enjoy reading them. So this is a really awesome one. It's basically something happens in this between Hannah, who is the main character, and her two suitors. She calls them suitors. That's how conservative this book is. That's the one thing I do warn people on. Hannah is supposed to be 29, and she's a very conservative Minnesota girl. But she has two boyfriends that she dates. One is like the town detective, and one is the town dentist. And something happens between the three of them that changes the whole dynamic of the relationships. And basically, I'm so excited to read the next one because I think Hannah's got some huge decisions to make after this, and she's just really thrown when she figures it all out. So that's the most exciting part of the book. It's not so much the murder mystery, but what happens between Hannah and her two guys. Another series I've been loving right now, and it's the House of Night vampire books, and it's basically, they compare it to like Hogwarts mixed with vampires. So there's the school that they go to when they get marked. So they're not really vampires yet. They're just, they're called fledglings, and they're just going to become vampires. And they end up going to school to learn about how to do it. And also, not everyone survives a change. So when they're in the school, it helps them survive better. And some major hijinks go on, and some evil people appear, and Zoe has to step up and save the day. So Zoe's one of the fledglings, but she's specially marked by Nyx, who is their like a vampire goddess. So she has some special powers, and she can kick butt. Anyway, the series is really good, and what I love about it is it's very, very fast-paced. Each book is like a couple weeks or a month, and then the next book follows directly. So I think there's about 8 books in the series, and it's not even a whole year of time. So it's really fast-paced. It's really well-written. PC Cass, who writes them. She writes them with her daughter, Kristen Cass, and also she's a teacher in Oklahoma, and she writes them with her students. So they really look at how young people today think and act. So it's not like Twilight, which is a little bit, again, really conservative and kind of old-fashioned thinking and a little bit like unrealistic. She's much more centered in a reality and of how a real teenager thinks. The last book was kind of sad that I read, which was Tempted. I was kind of sad with the ending. One of the characters doesn't make it through. I like that character a lot, so that was a little bit sad. But all the books are awesome. There's another one out called Burned, I think, but it's still on hardcover, so I haven't read it yet. The series I'm currently reading is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I absolutely adore these books. It's basically about the Seven Kingdoms, which are all run by a certain lord, and they're all governed by the king. The main family in this is the Starks, and they run Winterfell, which is the most northern kingdom, just below the Wall. And the Wall is what keeps the wild of the north from reaching the human population. And how they kind of have to deal with the other lords and the king, who is Ned Stark's old best friend, Robert Baratheon. And also how they deal with the fact that winter is coming. And that is their motto. It's always something they think about because they're the closest to the Wall. That they live in a seasons that last years. So right now they're in an extended summer. So the weather is good. Things are good in the whole universe of the Seven Kingdoms. But the winter is right upon them, and it's supposed to be like the worst winter ever. So when the winter comes, when all like the bad gets released, these kind of old beings are being awakened, the dragons, the White Walkers. And so not only are these mythical creatures coming to kind of rain down on the men of the world and kind of bring them problems, but also there's a lot of conflicts going on between the different families or the different lords in the Seven Kingdoms. So the Lannisters are trying to take over the throne, which is why it's called Game of Thrones. And Ned is the only one with any honor. So it's pretty much, it's very like complex. There's a lot of characters, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's dragons, there's zombies, there's, just incest and treason, and sort of like Lord of the Rings, but amped up to the 10th degree. And I think they're just really well written, and the show is incredible. If you've seen the show on HBO, the book is exactly the same. The show is definitely more racy because I think HBO takes some liberties on some of the scenes. But yeah, it's not for the very young at all. It's an adult series. I would still recommend reading the books. But because they give you an insight onto a lot of the characters, a little bit more history on the characters, it helps you distinguish who everyone is clearly, because it shows you the relationships between the characters that maybe you missed on the show or maybe they didn't really go into on the show. For example, we learn in the book that the knight that is with the Dothrakis, the knight that's been kind of banished for being a slave trader, I forget his name now, but if you've seen the show, the guy that's always with Daenerys, he is the son of the commander of the Night's Watch. So there's a whole scene in which Jon Snow receives the sword from the commander of the Night's Watch. And it was his sword that he handed down to his son. But he actually took it back when his son, I think his name is Jonah, when his son kind of betrayed the family and was banished. So, and actually was banished by Ned Stark, who is Jon's father. So it's very like connected and intrigued, and I did not know that they were related. So that was something that I learned in the book. The other thing that's kind of cool about them is there's no chapters. It's just done by character. So each chapter's got a character title, like Eddard is Ned Stark, and so this chapter's in his point of view. And then the next chapter's Catelyn, his wife, and that chapter's in her point of view. So I think that's really a cool device that the author uses, because it gives you some cool insight into a lot of the characters. Jon has his own chapters, which is Jon Snow, Ned's bastard son, Sansa, Arya, and Daenerys. And the last two books I wrote are not series, and they're these two. This one I mentioned in my last video. It is called Inside of a Dog. It's basically a look into what dogs see, smell, and know. And it's not so much about actually telling you what they see, smell, and know, because no one really knows that for a fact, but it's more about seeing a dog not as a person, but as an animal, and how they relate to the human world from that animal view. Because I think a lot of people, they project human emotions on dogs, they project human feelings on dogs, which dogs just don't have. Dogs don't really smile, you know? Like, they look like they're smiling, but that's not really the emotion that they're going through. My favorite chapter of the book was just that, like, turning off of that projecting of human attributes onto dogs, because that's a really bad way of thinking about dogs. But also the whole chapter on what they see, which I never really thought about. But like dogs, for example, they cannot see right up close, straight down, because of the way that their eyes are shaped. So a lot of the times, if you put a treat right in front of a dog's nose, they won't see it. And they'll be like, why can't they see this treat? It's like right there. But if you step back, they'll see it. And it's just because their eyes don't look straight. They kind of, they're curved, basically. Certain dogs, like dogs that have really flat faces, can see straight better, like a pug or something like that. But dogs that have like long noses, their straight vision is skewed. And that was really interesting because I never thought of that. And I was always wondering when my dog wouldn't see something that was right in front of him. It is quite a difficult book to get through, in the sense that there's a lot of technical stuff, and if you kind of skim through it or read fast like I do, I have to force myself to read a lot slower and really take in the knowledge. Otherwise, it's kind of useless to read it because I wasn't retaining anything. So yeah, that's the one thing. It is a bit hard to get into, but if you're interested in animal behavior, you will really like this. The last book I just recently finished was called The Phantom of Pemberley. Now, if you're a huge Austenite like I am and you love Pride and Prejudice, there are a lot of spin-off books out there, like continuations of the story, looks into different characters from the book. There's the whole series like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which is being made into a film actually. This is looking at a murder mystery at Pemberley after Elizabeth and Darcy wed. So they're at their house and all of a sudden these little mysteries start occurring. And it's a really cool book. I really enjoyed it. Just reliving those characters that are from my favorite book of all time, which is Pride and Prejudice. They make it a little bit more for the modern reader. They really take you into Darcy and Elizabeth's private life. So if you're kind of put off by that, you might not like this. But I didn't really guess totally the twist they took on the killer or the ghost, and I would recommend it for any Austenite or anyone who loves a good mystery. So yeah, Phantom of Pemberley. And then quickly, I'll just tell you guys some books that I'm reading next on my list. So I'm more than likely going to jump right into the rest of the Game of Thrones series. The other book I'm going to be reading soon is The Hunger Games, because I've heard so much about it, and I'm really excited that Jennifer Lawrence is starring in it, because I love her. I just saw X-Men First Class, and she was amazing in it. So I thought I'd give it a shot. I don't have the rest of the books, because I'm not sure how much I'll like it, but because I don't normally like futuristic books, like post-apocalyptic, anything kind of in the future, anything with like robots. I'm not really into any of those types of books, but I'm going to give it a shot and see what I think. And I think it'll be a great, like, quick beach read because it's a teen book. And the other one I plan on reading soon is The Girl Who Chased the Moon. It's the new book from Addison Allen, who I absolutely love. Garden Spells is one of my favorite books. It's basically a lot of relationship-based stories, family-based, dynamic stories with a little bit of magic put in. And I like anything like that. Obviously, you've seen with my book choices, I like vampires, I like fantasy, I like historical fiction. I love anything that takes me to a place that is not like here. This book, I haven't read it, but it's basically about a girl who moves back home and she's trying to figure out some of the mysteries surrounding her mother's life. And she figures out that she has this grandfather she never knew about. She lives in this house. It's got all these weird things that happen at it, like the wallpaper changes colors, there's lights in the yard. There's a woman in town who runs a bakery where it's kind of like chocolat in the sense that like she bakes certain cakes to help deal with certain love issues. And if you like Alice Hoffman, who wrote Practical Magic and The Story Sisters, which is an amazing book, Story Sisters, you'll love Addison Allen. She's really very similar. If you've read any of these books and you want to tell me about your favorite characters, please leave all that info below. If there's any books that you want more information on, please leave the info below and I'll kind of type in some answers for you. And if you have any suggestions for me, please leave them below as well. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.